This is the Sluggo, slant and go.
Georgia Tech, Florida State.
If you're going to ruin this show by doing research,
Notre Dame.
My dentist is a Notre Dame grad.
Definitely smells.
Casey the Beef Cregan, whenever I hear that, I think it's called Two Little Bums, if I remember the name of that little show music, and I thought it was just perfect for us. But whenever I hear that, I know it's Wednesday night. I know the beef is going to be on the other end of my internet, which sounds really strange. And speaking of the internet, I saw over the weekend you were a partying fool. What was the beef party? And what kind of party were you throwing this weekend?
Slider had his third birthday. So unfortunately, because of COVID, we didn't do a lot of necessarily partying. But we did as best as we could virtually and had a great time. My little guy turned 3. So we were very excited. He was very excited. He woke up, funny quick aside, he woke up and we told him it was his birthday. We were so excited for him. And he said, I don't want to be 3. And then he saw all the presents, and he said he was excited, and he's been telling everybody ever since that he's 3 years old. So,
cool,
yeah.
Man. What a great looking little guy. I mean, I can see you in his face, so don't take that the wrong way. I'm not complimenting you or anything. Couldn't do that, right? Guys can't do that. But great little guy with the charm elect smile on him. He's a charmer, Case.
Yeah, well, my dad has a phrase called with any luck he'll outgrow it. But yeah, at 3 I was cute too. So I mean, hopefully he hopefully he
just, well, got a little bit of a Mrs. Beef in there. So
yeah, there definitely is. She's got a cute little button nose. He's got that, and he's bossy as hell. So thankfully she's not listening. So.
All right. Kevron is checking in from Cope, South Carolina. And, of course, Nelson's checking in. Great to see you guys. Appreciate you guys breaking into the comments for us here 2 days before Christmas. And this show doesn't take any breaks, man. Crazy, crazy stuff. And what shirt you got on today? Beef?
I got a little 50 burger on it, just really because it's a Barstool Sports thing, which is kind of funny because we're going to go into a quote competitor of it here in a second. But put a 50 burger on them, meaning a blowout, a game. So yeah. I was very, very hopeful that Clemson was going to throw a 50 burger up on Notre Dame last week, but so that the shirt would have even more meaning. They didn't. Came up just a little bit short on that end. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. What do you got going tonight?
Look at me, man. I'm sluggoing it out tonight, man, because there's a Sluggo store on Teespring, and you can buy shirts and cell phone covers and whatever you want there. We get a couple bucks from each of those, and it helps us out. Matter of fact, we were able, thanks to Nelson and a couple other guys, we were able to get a little cash here to help pay for StreamYard for a month or so. Because it's not free. We love to do it. We're going to continue to do it. And we're working things behind the scenes to try and help defray some of the costs. But anyway, just search Sluggo Store on Teespring. That's the easiest way to get to it, or ask Nelson for the link because he's got it. Nelson, thank you for your purchase and everything else you do for the Facebook group. Wow. And everything. So we appreciate that very much. Hey, we got Robbie Posey from Cheyenne, Wyoming, getting ready to move back to South Carolina.
Yeah, he probably can't move back quick enough, Robbie. Thanks for checking in with us. We appreciate it, and go Tigers.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, Case. You have last week you talked about we talked about the deal. You're on Twitter. You're doing the Sideline Sports Twitter handle, Sideline Sports, Sidelines Clem, I think it is, _Clem. Yeah. And that led to some other opportunities for us called the College Sports Network. And that's why this one is called College Sports with K, the name of the episode. So why don't you talk a little bit about the College Sports Network while I share my screen, or at least I attempt to.
Sure, absolutely. Well, College Sports Network and Sideline Sports are one in the same, pretty much. College Sports Network is they're a blog and podcast network. A group of us are from all over the country, all over creation. Really are together making this network, trying to build it and grow it, a la a Barstool or even a Fifth Quarter, or there's a couple other entities out there. It's currently I run the sidelines_Clem Twitter page, and it's a lot of retweeting. I'll get out there and get you something new and fresh, and just trying to get interaction going on with the fans, the Clemson folk. And also what's coming down the line is that this podcast will be a part of the College Sports Network and live on the website, as well as doing a little writing. And I know I may have to enlist you, Marty, in your writing skills, but that is a passion of mine as well. I love writing. I love writing about sports. I love sports. So one thing that I asked the guys over there is if I could contribute, and they willfully are going to allow me to. So it's fun. It's exciting. It keeps me going. It's something new and fresh outside of the 9 to 5 that allows me to do a little fun stuff. So I have to come up with a little creative things, and I will. But that's tough, At the start, you're like, yeah, no problem. This is great. Yeah, this is easy. I'll write an article, and then I sit down to write one. It's like, what am I gonna write that hasn't been written already? So, but it's fun. It's been fun. Like I said, I've been live tweeting games, which is different. I live tweeted the Notre Dame Clemson game, and I'm screaming and cursing at the screen, but then I have to write, write something nice on the tweet. You got to keep it professional. So it's a new experience, but it's a lot of fun, and I appreciate you allowing me that a couple minutes to talk about it here. And obviously, we're in this thing together. So
no doubt, hey, definitely. And I'll. It's been a while since I wrote anything. A matter of fact, it's been a couple of years. I did enjoy it, but it's time consuming. We can just get on here and write a few things down on a Google Doc and just yammer for about an hour, and that's all cool. The writing part is time consuming, but a lot of fun, and there's a lot of reward in that. So I'll be glad to help you out.
We don't necessarily have to do it daily or weekly, even, like throw one up once a month, once every other month. I think because there's so much other stuff out there and so many other schools represented that we'd be able to fit right in. So hopefully we get to a point where maybe we can do a week, but at this point it's just few and far between. So we're going to grow it. We're going to build it. I have 1,131 followers, I believe,
nice.
That last check, and it was at 1,000 when I got it. So thanks to this show for getting me another 131, and it's great. That means I'm doing something right. Haven't lost any yet, which is good. That's always a thing too. So yeah.
when the haters follow you just to heckle you, and then they get tired of you, and then they'll drop you.
True.
After a while, you have to not worry about who's coming and going, and just hopefully more.
I want some haters.
Going. Yeah,
I'm okay with the haters.
Oh, we'll get to some hate in this show for sure. But sidelines_Clem. If I was a good producer, I'd have it up on the interweb. Oh, I do have it actually. Sidelines_Clem. There you go, Case.
There it is.
For the Twitter that Casey is running for the College Sports Network, College with the K. And that's this podcast will be there shortly.
Look at that too. There was 7 more followers on there. So I said 1131. It was, or whatever. I can't do math. Anyway, there was 10 more followers there. Or 13. Excuse me. God, math is hard.
Just growing right in front of your face. You're exploding. You're viral, Casey. You're viral. And not only that, we have some other good news. Some stuff we kind of hinted at last week, or talked a little bit about last week, is that we're not going to end this after football season and show up next June or spring or whatever. We're going to keep moving. Casey was manager for Clemson basketball, so obviously he enjoys and went to school at one of the best high school basketball programs in the nation. Very familiar with basketball, loves basketball. I love basketball. I was, Seldom Used Reserve. That's where I got the name from, basketball. And we both love college baseball and Clemson baseball in particular. So we'll be following on through the season. That's our plan. Keep it going. Last couple of weeks, I've reached out to a few folks to gauge their interest. So it's not just looking at these two beautiful faces every week. Terrence Oglesby has agreed to be on from time to time to talk about Clemson basketball and hopefully college basketball as a whole. And that's part of the reason we wanted to branch out into the College Sports Network, because we want to be about more than Clemson. We both went to Clemson. We both love Clemson. We have, the Facebook page that's almost all Clemson. Of course, Southern News Reserve is almost all Clemson fans. But we love all of college football. Want to widen our audience. As we've seen this week, there's a lot of Clemson on there, a few Ohio State guys, and not much else. There's a North Carolina fan here and there. But we want to broaden the audience, broaden the discussion to be more than just about Clemson. Terrence Oglesby will come on to talk about college basketball. Jason Priester, who wrote for Shaking the Southland a lot about Clemson baseball, has agreed to come on during college baseball season. So some regulars, some semi-regulars maybe. And I know my friend Brandon Rink is big into Clemson baseball and baseball in general. So we can have Brandon on from time to time. So we got a lot of things percolating in the background. You may not see it all, but we're working on it. Mr. Casey's out there doing his stuff, is selling, and here we are at the College Sports Network.
A couple more baseball guys. I haven't asked him yet, but I do have a straight connection to a couple of former players. I date myself every time I come on and tell you who I'm going to bring on. I hope people were fans back in the late 90s, but I do have a couple friends and guys I keep up with and keep in touch with that are former Clemson baseball players that I will be asking to come on as well.
Cool.
So hopefully they'll be able to do it as well. So a couple former minor leaguers. One made it all the way to AAA and kind of lived there for a little while, but I don't know. I'm not going to give them away yet because I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, so it's exciting. I love college baseball. I love everything about it. I follow it more than probably any normal person should.
Nice. Yeah, I love. I've shared some things off camera with you about interactions with some of the with Clemson baseball. It's been a lot of fun for me over the last few years. Also, somebody inquired about having Dan Hope on again because Clemson, Ohio State. I'm sure Dan's busy. Other Clemson shows are probably tracking him down and asking him to be on. So we'll give Dan a break. But he agreed with us to come back on and talk about the pro football draft. And when we get to that point, we can talk about Clemson players and other players. Dan used to write about the college, about the NFL draft for the Bleacher Report, I believe. So always a good resource, really great guy. I really enjoyed talking to Dan. Let's see, anything else? Oh, Nelson doesn't want us to forget about softball.
Absolutely. I am all in on Clemson softball as well. So they had, I think we mentioned it a little bit last week. I'm not as knowledgeable on it as I probably will be by the end of the year, but absolutely. I definitely want to be all in. Hashtag all in. That we will be on Clemson softball as well. If there's an audience for it, I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah, or just something we really enjoy talking about. Hey, Al Clark says his cousin's still fuming that A&M didn't get in the fourth spot. We're going to talk about the playoffs in just a minute, Al, so hang tight. And they had a shot at Alabama. It's getting shot in Alabama. Yeah, that
getting
was
chippy in the comment section tonight. I love it.
Oh, already. Yeah, I low key. One thing about softball before we move on and start talking about the championship games. Perhaps besides the paw on the helmet and the all-orange Clemson uniforms, one of the better-looking uniforms that Clemson has is those softball uniforms, right?
There's no question. They do all sorts of different color combinations.
Yeah.
They had a gray on gray with orange lettering in the script. It looked sharp on the ladies last year. Yeah, they're doing a really nice job. It just pops on the softball field. I don't know why that is. I'm sure some people out there will have smart comments, but I don't think it has anything to do with the fairer sex. I think it has a lot more to do with the way that they're using the colors. And those orange
right.
are great.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They have done it, and I know there's a lot of Clemson fans that are into tradition. But the good thing is, in this instance anyway, the softball team doesn't have any tradition, right? Can't say, well, they didn't do it that way in 1838, right? Anyway. On to the championship games. Clemson edged Notre Dame Saturday, Case. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but Clemson beat Notre Dame 34-10, despite Ian Book's prediction. I can't believe it didn't come true. takeaways from that game last Saturday, the Clemson Tigers edging Notre Dame 34-10.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That first couple drives, I literally yelled. I told everybody that I was probably going to be teaching my young son curse words on Saturday night, and surprisingly to most, he doesn't know them yet. But the first drive where they just kind of ran down the field and scored, was it a field goal? Oh, yeah, they got a field goal right at the beginning. But they were thrown to the tight end, and I literally stood up and said, "What are we doing?" It's kind of been my catchphrase here on this show, even. But it was, you knew this was going to happen. You knew Michael Mayer was going to be the main target, along with Kenny McKinley, and they were going to run the ball, and we weren't really stopping them. So I'm like, where did we make any adjustments whatsoever? Then they get the ball again, interception. They get the ball again inside the red zone. Thank God they missed the field goal, because at that point it could have been 10-0 before you blink. And I looked over at my wife and I said, "Here we go again." She was doing something else. She didn't know what I was talking about, but still, thankfully they missed the field goal. Then the next drive, Trevor throws the bomb to Amari, and I was like, oh, that's right. No, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And where it really turned for me to be completely fine, offensively anyway, was that 4th and 1. And Trevor made an obvious mistake. He thought that they got the first down on that 3rd and 9, whatever it was, or 2nd and 9, excuse me, comes up and spikes the ball on 3rd down. Now it's 4th and 1. But you saw him mouth like, I thought we got the first down. Then they give a little pitch play to ETN, who you think's going to get a yard, right? And he gets 35, 44 yards for a touchdown. So, at halftime, 24-3 felt real good. But I'll be honest with you, that defense was flying around the field. Yeah. There was a play in particular that Skalski put on Twitter of him getting blown up by Kieran Williams. Absolutely blown up. But because he got blown up, it allowed Miles Murphy and I forget who was on the other side. It may have been Darian Kendrick, that came and met at the quarterback. And it was like just everything seemed to work, whereas it didn't in the first game defensively. After those first 2 drives, they were doing nothing. And one thing that I saw on the social medias too, see, I'm getting it in because I couldn't talk last week. But they really hemmed Book in. They were not going to let him beat them. You saw it on a couple drives, Murphy coming around the edge and then seeing kind of a Book start getting squirmy, and he kind of just stood his ground, saying, "Where are you going, big dog?" And so a lot of that was hemmed in. The blitz pickups from Kieran Williams, which were so extraordinary in that first game, he was still picking them up, but Venables was sending somebody else. So
Kendrick ragdolled him on the sack that he had.
And I've been very critical of DK all year long, and especially on the text messages, saying that he has no interest in tackling anybody. He was on fire on Saturday night, and I take back almost all the bad things I said about him this year, because he was fantastic on Saturday night, and I was very impressed by the whole defense. They couldn't do anything, and I saw Notre Dame fans on the Twitterverse saying that we played our worst game of the year, and I said to one in particular, it has a lot to do with how Clemson played, rather than not how Notre Dame played, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the part, it's the part that usually gets left out when somebody plays their worst game of the year. It's because they're playing somebody on the other side. Brent Venables, second chance. Hello. Being a little bit older guy, having lived through a lot of losses and a lot of, just a lot of games where you kind of go ho-hum. I was not upset after the first drive. The interception was fluky. It was a tip ball, so I wasn't too upset. I was worried if it went down 10-0, I would have been worried. Even if it was 6-0, even if he had made that 27-yard field goal, that is when the momentum changed. But even if he had made it, I wouldn't feel too bad, because Trevor, Amari, Trevor, whoever, Trevor by himself, as we saw at one point. So I wasn't too worried then, but I certainly wasn't worried at the 3-0, especially when you held them to a field goal. If they'd have marched down there and scored on the first drive, a little bit of concern. I mean, scored a touchdown, I guess I should say.
Well, they moved the ball pretty easily, it seemed, that first drive. And
well, here's the stat that I heard, and I didn't know this during the game, but I heard Notre Dame had 120 yards in the first quarter and 170 yards the rest of the game, right? And most of those, or a good chunk of them at least, were in the one touchdown drive when, it was garbage time. So they probably had around 100 yards the rest of the game, second, third, and part of the fourth quarter. So Venables had those guys ready to play. And no knock on DJ, but when I heard all the guys being the talking heads during the week say, well, DJ wasn't the problem because he threw for 439 yards. Well, he threw for 439 yards because he couldn't run, and there wasn't very good blocking for Travis to run anywhere. I think he had 28 yards in the first game. But Trevor's running opens up, like gaping holes for ETN to run, right?
And he doesn't need much.
Yeah. But Trevor's running, it's just incredible. The first time I saw him, and tomorrow's Throwback Thursday on Some Use Reserve, we're going to have the touchdown he ran against Ohio State last year. 67 yards is going to be our Throwback Thursday video. But when you see that guy run, and I think they alluded to it during the week, the week leading up to Notre Dame, is he doesn't look like he's doing what he's doing, but he's clipping it off at 5 yards a stride almost, it looks like. And nobody can catch up to the dude. It's just amazing to watch him run.
Yeah, it is awesome. It's awesome that he brings that element to it too. And I heard the same thing that everyone was saying, that DJ, and I even said it, I think DJ wasn't the issue. You're right. But you know what else? They made him throw against them because they probably knew about the shoulder that wasn't completely healthy, so they weren't going to run the RPOs as much. Notre Dame just pinned their ears back and just stuffed the run and said, beat us, and we'll try to keep up with you. And you know what? At the end of the day, they did that first time around. But this time, they were going to have to deal with the sunshine, as he's called by some Ohio State folks, pulling that ball back and gaining 7, 9. It's so funny watching Clemson in some of these games, especially the ones that you feel like they really are in control, that 3rd and 9, you don't get nervous.
No, not at all.
It's like he'll even drop back, a little 7-step drop, find someone over the middle for 16, and now you're moving the chains, and you're like, that was 3rd and 9, technically behind the chains, right? But it's funny. It's funny to watch. We are definitely a spoiled bunch right now, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, 3rd and 9, nothing worries me. Now, when you get around, it's a fast giraffe, by the way. When you get around to like 3rd and 13 or 14, that you start okay, that's a little bit much. But when it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, that's nothing for Trevor and those receivers, even the receivers they have now, without the big
even the dump off ETN. The dump off, they're even getting 12, 15. So it's amazing what he does for us. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss 9 as well, and we're going to miss 3 also, and 17. Sorry.
That guy, Travis, on those passes, he's shot out of a rocket. He looks like they're running too, but I think it's more like he gets a running start and Trevor hits him, and he is like shot out of a rocket on those passes. Okay, enough about Clemson, although we can never say enough about Clemson, and we'll bring it up in a few minutes when we talk about the playoff. But let's move on to the love of my life, Spencer Rattler. I said I was going to give up on him if Oklahoma didn't win and cover my bet. And they did both, but I'm hearing it already, Casey. It was a week off, and then we're back to, I think Oklahoma they should have really been in a playoff. I'd much rather, they probably deserve it more than Oklahoma. Now, more than Notre Dame. Not everybody's saying this, not even most people, but I've heard it out there. They're still talking about Oklahoma's the team nobody wants to play. Who are these jokesters, man? This team barely beat Iowa State, a good team, granted, but not world beaters, right? Not world beaters. But here we are. They're already pimping out Oklahoma for next year, right? Okay, they didn't make it this year. Maybe we can talk them into being in there next year. I love Spencer Rattler. That's a joke. I don't get the Oklahoma thing, not at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that it's just maybe a proponent of the Big 12 being the Big 12, right? And I know these stereotype of the conferences are exactly that. They're stereotypes, but stereotypes are built on some semblance of reality. So they have the big time quarterback. They do. He threw for, I don't know, 275 yards, 272, something like that, if I remember correctly. A couple touchdowns. But I think really in the Big 12 championship game, what turned that around was 3 interceptions by Brock Purdy. I thought that, and they didn't really seem to run with Hall all that much. He ended up with under 100 yards. I just think that they I don't know, maybe I'm biased the other way, but because I picked Iowa State last week, but I wanted them to win, and I just thought they had openings to win that game and didn't. And then here we are talking about Oklahoma. Now, another side of it, in the bowl game, they play Florida, correct? And the SEC mantra is if they lose a bowl game, they didn't want to be there. So it'll be fun. That'll be a fun game. It's something that I really do want to watch. It's a game I want to watch, definitely. But Florida has some guys that are hurt, some opting out. Will Trask, throw up 1,000 yards in the game? I don't know, but maybe he could against those defenses. Oklahoma is Oklahoma, and they're going to be Oklahoma next year, and they have Lincoln Riley there, and they're going to have Rattler back, and they'll just reload and be the cream of the crop of the Big 12 again, I think. But
they'll win the Big 12 and lose 2 games, and then they'll say, well, where would they be without those 2 losses? They're peaking at the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think that it's the same old story though. Everyone's so bored with the playoff, but yet what happens when a Big 12 team makes the playoff, a la Oklahoma? They get blown out in the first. They're world beaters all year long, and then they get blown out by Alabama or Clemson.
That's the whole thing, right? Out of any team that shouldn't beg to be in the playoff, or writers, talking heads, personalities shouldn't try and push into the playoff, it's Oklahoma. They're 0 for whatever, 3, 4, I don't even know, lost count. They've lost every single playoff game, and they still try and shove them into the playoff. I don't get it.
Especially with losses to Iowa State in the regular season and
Kansas State. Right?
Kansas State. Yeah. So, I mean, don't lose those games. Go 12 and 11 and 0 in a normal year, and then talk to us. But don't start making excuses for 2 losses and then trying to weasel your way into big boy games. No doubt.
All right, next game up, Ohio State, Clemson's opponent coming up next week, beat Northwestern 22-10. I watched about the first half of this game. I don't remember what happened at halftime, but I kind of lost track of it. I think I flipped over to watch Oklahoma, actually, is what happened, because that became a more interesting game to me. But Ohio State did not look like a playoff team to me. They won the game, but, Northwestern was running the ball down their throat, as you and I were texting during the game. Northwestern started out by running down their throat and led a good chunk of this game. What was your takeaway from the Buckeyes game?
Yeah, it's an otherwise inept offense, right? Northwestern isn't really known for their offensive prowess, but Peyton Ramsey looked okay, threw for 200 and some odd yards, a couple interceptions that kind of turned that game around as well. But, on the other end, Ohio State found their wealth of riches in Oklahoma transfer. Trey Sermon ran for 8,000 yards, I think, unofficially. 331 and 2 touchdowns. I had to look at it. But he wasn't normally the starter, right? Master Teague is normally the starter there. So they found something maybe in Trey Sermon. But you know what? One thing that I've been hearing a lot of, and one thing that I've seen with my own eyes during that game and the only 5 others, it's not hard, small sample size, is Justin Fields has kind of regressed this year. He doesn't look like, I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know what's going on with him, but he just doesn't look like the world beater that he was last year. He threw for 114 yards. Obviously, they didn't necessarily need him, but he had 2 more interceptions. And Northwestern kind of choked the game away a little bit, but they don't have the offense to hang with them. So their defense is okay. I know it was ranked in the top 15 or something in the country against the run. Obviously gave up 331, but that had a lot to do with the fact that they were on the field a lot of the time, I think. And Trey Sermon was good. There's taking nothing away from him. I'm not sold on Ohio State at all. And I'm usually the pessimistic Clemson fan that thinks we're going to lose by 30 every week, regardless of opponent. I don't know if we're necessarily going to lose by 30, but I think we match up well. against them. We'll talk about that in a little bit, though.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit, and we'll make some picks next week. I think Justin Fields does have an injury. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure Nelson will let us know in the comments. But they did mention an injury after the game.
Oh, it's a thumb. It's a thumb.
No, I knew it was something, arm, hand, something. His thumb. Yeah. So maybe that explains some of it. And if you got a guy running for 331 yards, what else do you need, really? I mean, the only one that couldn't do that is C.J. Spiller in the ACC championship game in 2009. He needed another 100 to pull it out for Clemson. Alabama defeated Florida 52-46. Was that it's almost a basketball score? A lot of takeaways about the Alabama defense not being. I've seen it online during the week saying, this could be a problem if Alabama faces Clemson, even with Clemson's not so star-studded wide receivers that I think people are starting to pay attention to after last week, by the way. What's your takeaway from the SEC championship game?
Man, oh man, defense optional in this game. But did you watch it at all?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'm not usually. I do like the 3:30 SEC game, but I'm not like locks at all about it. However, this was a game. This was a lot of fun. Alabama was up, I think, 2 scores at the end. Florida scored late, tried an onside kick, didn't get it. But what a game! And if you like offensive football, these were the 2 teams to watch because you got Devontae Smith on one side, and you have and Mac Jones, and then you have Trask on the other side with Kyle Pitts and his cast of cronies there. On Florida, but Jones threw for 418 and Trask threw for 408, each with 3 touchdowns. Actually, Jones had 5 touchdowns. Yeah, man, it was a fun game. I think you start looking at it as a Clemson fan, and you're saying, "Wow, Florida put up 46 against them." Clemson's offense is way more balanced because I don't know if you've ever heard of a running back from Florida, but I certainly haven't. I mean, I have, but. You know what I'm saying? They don't run the ball. They're dropping back and slinging it. One thing I think is interesting, and I saw it the other night, and I'm saying interesting now, but and I've seen it kind of when in watching Alabama throughout the year, is that Mac Jones is throwing to receivers that are wide open. I'm talking with 15 yards to spare. I have a whole thing about system quarterbacks here, but I think you and I might be able to throw to Devontae Smith. And Mechie and those guys, and they might get Jalen Waddle back too for the playoff. And Najee Harris is a load, man. Alabama scares me, but on defense, you're probably in another shootout with them. But I don't know if Clemson gives up a 50 burger to Alabama.
Well, we've seen that in the previous championship games, right? 45-40 and 35-31. Before those scores were cool. I do like offensive football, but at some point it gets ridiculous, right? I mean, 52-46. It wasn't but 2 or 3 years ago that the SEC would have looked down their nose at that game.
Oh yeah,
said that that's a Big 12 crap. Now it's like the greatest game ever because it was an SEC game. I think that's part of my problem with the SEC. It's shoved down our throats so much, so repetitive. On and on, commercials, the internet, everywhere you look, talking SEC, you got Paul Feinbaum's head out there talking. It just gets old, and it turns me off. I'm an old dude. Get off my lawn. It turns me off, and I just can't always sit down and listen to a game because the incessant greatest conference in the world and blah, 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 blah. So I do tune out occasionally. And truth be told, I didn't expect Florida to give them the game they did. So that's on me. That's on me. I was a bad college football fan. And after the Clemson game, I really didn't care what happened to anybody else, to be honest with you. Which is not a good thing to say on a show that's hoping to branch out into.
No, but I get it. It's almost like you're good. Especially after a win. You're good. I sit back on the couch and I kind of watch without, sometimes I'll take notes on other games. I don't after a Clemson win, especially at that 4:00 time. You're sitting there watching the game and you're just kind of like, oh, yeah. Oh, they scored again. Oh, they scored again. So,
well, I think, in my defense, part of my problem is I like to see a variety of games, so I'm changing channels then, right? I'm like you with the Clemson game. I don't care what's happening on another channel. right? If it's 62-3, I'm still watching Clemson, right?
Yeah.
But when it's over, I like to do the around the country and get a little bit of all the games. And speaking of which, we hear a lot about Cincinnati, right? We hear a lot about Cincinnati being undefeated, but did you know there's another undefeated conference champion in America? The San Jose State Spartans? I don't even know what they're
Spartans, yeah.
They're undefeated. I saw them come into Texas like 3 years ago and get beat 128-4 or something and win one game, I think, that year and get just blasted by everybody. So I guess they didn't play any non-conference games, and I don't, big deal or not, but they made it undefeated. Now, I didn't see any of this game, which made me sad because I like a little plucky San Jose State team.
Yeah, and Nick Starkel, the quarterback there, threw for 452, 453, and a couple 3 touchdowns. But their coach was rumored to be leaving them for Arizona, but he's sticking around. So obviously they're building something there. They're 7-0 out there in the Mountain West Conference, and they beat a pretty good Boise State team.
Yep.
So a Boise State team who lost their head coach. Their head coach to Auburn, Harsin. So. Yeah, I liked watching them. Truth be told, I'm old and I have a young kid, so I didn't get through much of the half of this one. Actually, it was on at the same time as the 8 o'clock. Anyway, details. But I watched a little bit of it because I do like Nick Starkel and I like that program, and their colors kind of pop on the TV. So it was a good game, and yeah, they're undefeated. They should be top 15, top 10.
The week before when they played, I think it was Nevada. And there was Starkel, and I don't remember the Nevada's quarterback's name, but they were both really good. They both stood out. Their arm talent, anyway. I don't know about their decision making and all that kind of stuff that scouts know.
Mountain West,
they weren't your typical Mountain West quarterbacks, is what I'm saying, and it showed. Just bullets. Starkel, I think he's been at more colleges than Chase Bryce, though. Started out at A&M, and he went somewhere else, and now he's San Jose State, but good for him. Okay, Case, coming up, New Year's Day, the playoffs. Let's start out by talking about Alabama and Notre Dame. I think it's an 18.5-point spread here. I don't think there's any question about who's going to win, unless you're going to surprise me here. We haven't talked about this, so you may, what the heck, because you picked Texas A&M to win the SEC West, which we'll talk about next week. Hopefully our partner in crime here is Locks is not with us tonight to give him kudos for picking Clemson and Notre Dame to split and then perhaps face each other in the playoff. If that's going to happen, first thing that's going to have to happen is Notre Dame is going to have to beat Alabama. Thoughts?
I think Notre Dame, and here's the back to our commenter about Texas A&M. I think Notre Dame was the rightful team to get that 4th spot, in my opinion. I do, because they have the best loss in the country. It's kind of like Clemson with the number 2 spot. They also have probably the 2nd best loss in the country, losing to the number 4 team in the country. So I think Notre Dame, their full body of work was deserving of getting that 4th spot. However, this matchup I don't like for them at all, because I think Notre Dame's DBs are hot garbage, not just garbage. I think their defensive backs are not good, and Mac Jones and Devontae Smith may have a field day on them. And there are other Frisbee catching dogs that they have. And then when they're playing loose and have to drop 6 and 7 into coverage, then they'll give the ball to Najee Harris. I do have a little kind of thing, I don't know, talking to me in the ear about Alabama having trouble with guys that can run a little bit. Notre Dame has a great offensive line, not a good offensive line, a great offensive line. Alabama's front 4 is pretty good, but they have obviously issues on defense and the running quarterback. So unless they keep Book hemmed in and watch what Clemson did this past week to him, no one else really did this year. No one else did at all. Well, maybe Louisville, but no one else really hemmed him in as well as Clemson did this weekend. And so if Alabama lets him loose, maybe keeps it close, keeps it inside that 19.5. I won't tip my hands at all, but it might be closer than those experts think out there in Vegas.
I think they're going to, you hit the nail on the head. They're going to have trouble keeping up with Alabama's scoring. And if they think Travis was a handful, Just wait till they get a hold of,
Yeah, they're in trouble there.
try and get a hold of Mr. Harris because, wow. Yeah, I can't see Notre Dame. Let me the first Clemson Notre Dame game. Notre Dame won the game, and we know who was there and who wasn't there, and we know what Ian Book said. I think they're pedestrian. If one way to look at that game was Notre Dame beat Clemson and they rushed the field and it was the greatest thing in the world and they deserve everything and they're moved up to number 2 because they beat Clemson, by God. I mean, they didn't really beat Clemson. They beat a shell of the Clemson team. And when the shoe was on the other foot, so to speak, when Trevor was there and some of the defensive guys, and they were missing 2 offensive linemen, totally different game. So I don't think Notre Dame is as good as they've been made out to be. I think they're top 10-ish good, but I think they got a lot of breaks. I mean, my God, Travis literally handed them a touchdown. Literally handed them a touchdown, and you can argue, yeah, well, Book fumbled in the end zone, et cetera, et cetera. It's all true. But my point is, I think healthy Clemson beats healthy Notre Dame, and I don't care where they play. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think you're right. Alabama is up here, and everybody else is battling down here. Can somebody beat them on a one-off basis? Obviously, it's college football. That's why we love it so much. Is that likely to happen to a Nick Saban team in a playoff game? No. And I don't know which side I'm going to take either because 19.5 is a lot. It's a decent Notre Dame team. I just trashed them a little bit. But I said top 10, right? So it's a decent Notre Dame team. They get a couple of breaks. If somebody throws a fumble in their hands, they may cover that 19.5. We don't know yet. All right, this is the game we want to talk about the most, though. Clemson and Ohio State. The coaches are getting into it 2 weeks before the game, not just the fans. The fans are all over each other, and the media are throwing things out. And Facebook group is, had a little bit of back and forth. We have a couple of Ohio State guys there, friends of yours, I believe, and a lot of Clemson fans. They've been going back and forth about it. This is going to be one heck of a football game, but it's going to be a one heck of a 10 days until we get to the game. Your early thoughts on Clemson and Ohio State?
I haven't read enough, unfortunately, on Ohio State yet. And like Dabo said, it is a small sample size. I think the offensive coordinator of Ohio State came out, Kevin Wilson, thank you, came out and said that he might throw a little triple option because he was a little tongue-in-cheek jab at Dabo saying small sample size. He said he watched the Citadel game instead of spending his 25th wedding anniversary with his wife. That's fine because Brent Venables can stop the triple option. So please do bring that. I don't like the talk, and that's weird because normally I do, and I'm a trash talker a little bit myself in real life, or at least was in my younger days, probably 3 years ago. I don't like it, but however, Dabo, the year that Clemson beat Ohio State 31-0, he was a little mouthy the weeks leading up to that game too, and then came out to say, or somebody said that they saw on film how many holes Ohio State had and knew that it was going to be a blowout. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking with the way that he ranked them number 11, I mean, that's obvious bulletin board material, even though he came out a week before and said that he didn't think that 6 games was enough to get in. I just hope, I don't know, I just hope that maybe he sees something on film that they can exploit often and a lot, and that it's another 31-0 game, because I'm going to be a nervous wreck on New Year's Day. Thankfully, I'll be in South Carolina, so maybe I'll be a warm nervous wreck rather than a cold one. But it is what it is. It's Clemson, Ohio State, man. The fans don't like each other. The teams don't like each other. I just hope it doesn't get chippy and trying to take players out. Either way, either side. I don't think it'll come from Clemson, but I'm biased. I just know Sean Wade called in the offseason, he said something like, "I'm back, sunshine," on Twitter. And we know what happened to him last year. So I just hope it doesn't get chippy, that it's 2 good football teams playing, and the better team wins. And I hope the better team is right there.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm not a big trash talker. I don't, get into it. I don't do Twitter much anymore. That's where 98% of it is really. Um, and I see some of it in the Facebook group, and that's just not me. I'm just not interested in that. And I agree with you. I hope it doesn't get chippy. I hope nobody on either side gets hurt by some late hit or hit to the helmet or any of that kind of thing. But when you were talking about Dabo knowing they had holes in the defense, I remember that as Alabama, the 44-16 game. I think it was Larry Williams who said on one of his podcasts that they were extremely confident. They being Clemson were extremely confident going into that game because they knew They knew with the receivers they had at the time, they could take advantage of some of the matchups on the back end at Alabama. I don't remember it about the 31-0 Ohio State game, but I wouldn't be surprised because that was a butt-kicking shutout of Ohio State. It's really a I was going to say the I word, but I'll use another word. It's intriguing to to try and understand why there's such animosity. I understand it on the Ohio State side because it's a little school in South Carolina that they can't beat, even when they were theoretically better. I read one article that said when they lost to Clemson in the Gator Bowl in '78, it was Clemson that ended Woody Hayes' coaching career. No, it was Woody Hayes. It ended Woody Hayes' coaching career. So I understand it on the Ohio State side. And maybe like Clemson couldn't get past Duke, right, in football. It's like you're in this big football school and you can't get past this little school. You got to get over that. Clemson's a national power and has been for 7, 8, 9 years now. On the Clemson side, I think they, as we saw in the comments earlier, they feel like Ohio State is entitled, feel like they're entitled to the playoffs and entitled to this lofty position when they're really not deserving of it. Maybe they're not this year. I know before the season started, as you and I were planning out this show, I thought they were going to be the best team in the nation. I thought, because all those guys were coming back, and Justin Fields, but as you said, he's regressed. Some of the other players look like they've regressed. They don't look like the same team from last year. The team from last year wouldn't have beaten Northwestern 22-10. They would have beaten them like 58-3. So maybe it all comes together next week. I don't know, but I don't see the same team. I favor Clemson to win the game. I don't know about 7.5 points because that hook's there on the end. But
you and your hooks.
Yeah, me and my hooks. He said hooks, honey, not hookers. So I don't know who I would pick against the spread, but I'd pick Clemson to win it, at least right now.
Yeah, I hope everyone is healthy too, right? That's a big piece of it. Theo Mugros checking in with me all week. All night here. He said, "Let's go, baby." So he's ready for it, and he said Ohio State's still really good, and the media is creating that trash talk, is what he told me too. So Ohio State doesn't have the resume, but they are very talented, and what concerns him is losing any players due to positive COVID tests. Yeah, I just hope everyone's healthy. If you get a fully healthy Clemson team on the defensive side and offensive side, heck, you get somebody back in Ngata, or I don't think Ngata's coming back, but if you get Ladson back healthy, I know he was on the field a little bit last week, not a lot, a little bit, and you're still going to start EJ Williams, but if you can get EJ Williams off the field for a breather and you're inserting number 2 in there, if you get his drop out of the game real early in the game, he's dynamic too. So you get anything out of him, anything out of number 2, you get anything out of number 10 as well. Just to get him on the field, man, you throw a couple more receivers with Trevor, this game could get ugly. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. Get Travis going, get Trevor going, and I think Clemson's going to be all right.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that next week when we make our predictions. Let's finish this up by talking about a couple of stories that I heard during the week that really frustrate me. And I don't know if any of our media friends are listening, if Priester's listening, or Brandon Rink, or anybody else, Dan Hope, or anybody we talk to is listening. But the talk now is that everybody's pushing for 8 teams in the playoff, right? I heard one of the podcasts Nelson and I listened to, Barton and Bud from CBS Sports. Barton Simmons, a recruiting guru, and Bud Elliott, ex of Florida State, but now working for 247. They started talking about fairness and the health of the sport. We need more than these same teams. We need different teams that's turned into a regional sport. Breaking news. It's pretty much always been a regional sport with a few exceptions, right? Southern Cal, Notre Dame occasionally back in the 70s. But this didn't happen overnight. And they fully admit, here's the part I don't understand. They fully admit that these teams, like 5 through 8, don't have a snowball chance in Hades of winning, but they just want to see them in. Hey, I do not want to see Cincinnati get beat by 50 points by Alabama. I don't get it. Why would you want – if you were to make the argument that Cincinnati could compete with Alabama, maybe not this year, but some year, or they could compete with Clemson, okay. But basically they were saying, yeah, I know they don't stand a chance, but man, it's more fair if they're in there and they get crushed. I mean, this is not college baseball, right? Coastal Carolina is not walking away with the National Football Championship. Fresno State, who won back-to-back baseball championships, isn't walking away with it, right? I don't get it. I think in the long term, it's easy for me to say as a Clemson fan, but I think it's going to hurt the sport because you're going to have teams in there with 3 losses, and the regular season is going to be devalued. That's my point.
And one thing that I heard from the Morgan Thomas show, another really good podcast, Clemson centric, from Alan Adams, he was talking the other night, Monday night, about Clemson fans have to are a little bit snobby about this because we're in the top 4, so we don't have to worry about it. But if you go to 8, then you add another game, then maybe be careful what you wish for, was really what he said. And I kind of agree with it because you're always going to have, like if you say they go to 8, you're always going to have number 9 complaining, right? That's never going to stop. We see it in the NCAA with 64 or 68 teams now. Team 69 is complaining about it. So you're not going to take that away ever. So if that's a narrative that's out there, that's not going to go away. I do think 8 teams kind of saturates it. And I'm going to echo and parrot what you said. As a Clemson fan, it's easy for us to say, right? It is because we're in it. We're in top 4. But I do hear from a lot of people, friends from others that are fans of other schools, say it's boring because slot in Alabama, slot in Ohio State, slot in Clemson. Those are the 3 teams, and then sacrificial lamb number 4. That's what it's been the last few years, and that's been really the story. So I don't know where I stand because I haven't really thought about it too much, because I think it's one of those things kind of like the preseason polls that I'd probably get really upset and pissed off about and have a really true rant. And I don't know if I want to do that for another thing. I think 4 is fine. I think we have an argument this year because you have a group of 5 teams that aren't close. You have a Cincinnati and you have Coastal that aren't even in, that are undefeated, and San Jose State that are undefeated, and they're barely breaking the top 10. So I think of all the years to do it, I think this was the year to get a team like a Cincinnati in that 4 spot that are undefeated and do they deserve a chance to get blown out by Alabama? Yeah, maybe this year. I don't know. I don't think I would go to 8, but there's talk. Apparently, Colin Cowherd came out the other day that said he talked to some high-ranking officials at the NCAA, said it's inevitable that 8 teams are coming.
If they do the 8, I hope they figure a way, and I'm probably the only person in America that wants this, college football fan, that there's less of an argument. There's 5 conference champions, right? 5, or I don't care if you're 8 and 4, just like college basketball, you're in if you're a conference champion. And there's 3 at large. That would only, that would put it down, put the argument less, I guess, make the argument less. Just 5 of them are taken by conference champions. Figure out the other 3. I'm probably the only person who doesn't like the incessant discussion, even though I'm using it for show purposes, of who should be in and who should be out. It drives me nuts. I mean, we got people arguing for Oklahoma, who lost to Kansas State. but because they're on a roll now. Well, yeah, but that's that's like saying forget about the first part of the season. It really doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. It should matter. I don't get it.
That's the beauty of college football, right? Is that every game matters.
And it will not matter if you go to 8 teams. It'll matter less, I should say. It will matter, but it'll matter less. Right?
And it's kind of that double-edged sword because I love college football, and as soon as the national championship is crowned, I'm sad. Literally, like the moment that whistle blows and they're putting the trophy up and they're talking to the head coach, I start thinking, oh, there's no more college football for however many months. I do have a friend, Daria Bedard, from over there in Greenville, North Carolina, checking in. She said, as a Florida fan and college football fan, I'd love to see it expand to 8 and see how it goes. So it's along that same lines. It's more football, right? It's another game. It works for the NFL. What do they do? 6? They do 6 teams. You give the top 2 maybe a bye, and at least then you have all 5 conference champions in there, and then a 6th. Heck, throw the best group of 5 in there and run it 6. I don't know what the right number is. I don't know why everyone's talking about 8. I like 4, for obvious reasons. Especially recently, I think there's only been one playoff that Clemson hasn't been in. But I don't know what the right number is. I kind of like the 6 thing, but no one's talking about it, so it won't fly. But I'll put it on sidelines_Clem on Twitter.
Well, here's the deal. To your Florida fan there, this year it happens to be Florida, and it could be anybody next year or the year after. It could be Clemson for all we know. But somebody's going to have, at number 8, is going to be a 3-loss team. Is that what you want in your playoff? A team that's lost 3 times. Florida's a little bit different. They lost to Alabama twice, right? Their big deal was losing to A&M. But
no, they didn't lose to Alabama twice. They lost to LSU.
Oh, LSU. I'm backwards. You're right.
Yeah, no, I figured they did too, but they didn't play them in the regular season. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but they've lost 3 games. So this year, they would be in the playoff if there are 8 teams, right? I mean, do we want to see a 3-loss team in the playoff? It's just something to think about.
It's a slippery slope. There's no question. It's a slippery slope. We'll see what happens.
If that's the case, Alabama, that's going to make it easier for Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State to be in there because they're never going to lose 3 games. I say never, but I mean,
you wouldn't.
Rarely are they going to lose 3 games. So they're always going to be in there.
With the recruiting rankings.
Yeah, there's going to be more teams in there with them, but it's still going to be the same teams. Okay. And the last thing, I'll try not to rant on this, but Andrea Adelson's story, about the predictable committee and how they didn't choose Cincinnati. And I think she mentioned way down the article, she mentioned San Jose State. And I get it. If you think Cincinnati's strength of schedule is bad, I think it was 77th. San Jose State's was worse just because of the conference they play in. And to some extent, especially this year with the dearth of non-conference games, you can't help that. But my point about this story is she's saying the committee is predictable. Let me ask, what were they supposed to do? If they had came out and done something crazy, people would have been outraged about that. People are going to be outraged about whatever they do. For God's sakes, I heard one podcast talking about they didn't look right just sitting around watching football. I mean, they can't do anything right. It's a no-win situation. I wanted to ask her when I read part of the article, what did she expect the committee to do? Did she expect them? Would it have been unexpected to put Texas A&M in there? I guess my point is they need to do what they feel is right, and this is what they felt right. I'm sorry it was predictable, and it wasn't crazy for you to write a wild and crazy story about what happened. That's my point. They want something crazy to happen because they want to be able to write a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's been a little edgy this year too on it. So I like her. I like her writing a lot, but she's definitely, her and David Hale are becoming the 2 writers that are kind of throwing a little bit of, not jabs necessarily, but kind of articles that make you think and get people pissed off. And, I don't think ESPN's pay for click, but they might be.
Yeah, it's just, I'm old and cranky, Casey. And you may fire me off the show because it seems like all I'm doing lately is ranting. But it's just when I see stuff like that, I'm like, what did you want them to do? You threw out a, quote, problem. You didn't throw out an explanation. You just complained a solution. You just complained about the problem. So I don't know. All I know is next week I'm gonna try not to rant. We're just gonna talk about playoff games and what we got coming up. So everybody go check out Sidelines_Clem on Twitter. That's your man right there, Casey the Beef Cregan. College Sports Network, which we're going to be part of soon. Work out some issues there and get some details, but podcast will be up there. And of course, you can always find us here on 7 Reserve. And I forgot, Casey, I always get confused on whether it's your side chick or your main chick, the Chop and Beef show. You guys are taking this week off?
We're taking this week and likely next week off. I haven't told the boys about next week, but we are going to take this week off. Yep, we're gonna bring it back. Maybe do a New Year's Eve show because we record on Thursdays. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We had a really good show, fun show last week. A lot different than this. A lot more edgy, I guess I should say. But it's fun. Check it out if you get a chance. It's definitely mind numbing. If you like mind numbing, you're probably not going to have to think too much listening to the three of us.
It is a lot of fun. I always get chuckles out there, even if they're at my expense. I don't usually tell you guys when you say something that reminds me of myself, but it happens more than you would think.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, it's pretty embarrassing. That's why I keep it to myself. All right, Case, if you could do the closeout.
Absolutely.
Find the exit. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much to everyone for watching and listening. Thanks to Nelson Wilhite, Aaron Kahn, Sean Flood, Brian Hutto, the College Sports Network, and everyone on the Seldom Used Reserve Sluggo page, the Sluggo podcast, and Chop and Beef. Each and every one of you who listens, supports, likes, and shares. New and exciting things coming in 2021. Happy holidays to everybody from everybody here at the Chop and Beef Show. On behalf of Marty, Seldom Used Reserve Coleman, I am Casey the Beef Cregan. We'll see you next week.
Casey, have a great Christmas, man, and have a lot of fun with the 3-year-old. That's great. Those are prime times, man. Enjoy it so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Talk to you next week. Later.
All righty.
I think that sounds pretty good.